What's going on, folks? Welcome back to Beans to Greens. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to make a compost tea. But before we get into it, I want to talk a little bit about living soil and why compost tea is so beneficial and important to living soil. So there's two main ways of growing, synthetic and organic. In synthetic, you're taking your bottled nutrients and you're feeding it to the plant by just pouring it into the soil, and the roots end up taking it up. So you're essentially feeding the roots in the plant. Now, with synthetic, no matter how many nutrients you put into the soil, that plant is going to uptake it, regardless if it needs it or not. While organic, we're feeding the soil and not the root system. And what I mean by that is we have all these beneficial bacterias and microorganisms inside that soil. So when we add things like manures and bone meals, these microbes and beneficial bacteria actually break these things down over time and convert them into plant available nutrients. Okay. So I'm back and I've got all my materials for my compost tea. I'll just run you through them really quick. I've got water in a 5-gallon bucket here. I've got my compost, Coast of Maine cow manure compost, and then earthworm castings. I have a mesh bag in order to put those composts into. And then I've got two forms of simple sugars here, one being horticultural coconut, and then the next being unsulfured organic blackstrap molasses. And then I'm also going to add a little bit of two different amendments just for a little bit of nutrition, one being BioLive and the other being fishbone meal. So let's go ahead and hop into it. I've got about 3 gallons inside this 5-gallon bucket of regular tap water. I'm on a well, so I have no chlorine in my water, so that's not a concern for me. On the outside of my bucket, I have strapped to it just a seedling mat, a heat mat. And the reason I have that is it's winter here and my basement is about 63 degrees. Ideally, you'd like your compost tea to be the same temperature in which you're going to be feeding to your plants. So that's why I've got that heat mat on there, just to bring the ambient temperature up a little bit. Okay, so first thing that we're going to do is we're going to add our compost into our water along with our simple sugars, and then we'll add our nutrients, and I'll kind of run through why I'm using each of these. Now with compost teas, you could go as simple or as complex as you want. So the idea here is that we're trying to add biology to our soil via the compost tea. Now, the way that we're going to do that is adding cow manure compost and earthworm castings. You could choose one of these and you could roll with that, or you could have as many different types of composts as you want. I like a nice diverse biology in my soil, so that's why I opt to use the cow manure and the earthworm castings. You're going to get a little bit different biology and beneficial bacterias from the different composts. You'll get a different biology from cow manure as you would chicken manure, as you would the earthworm castings as well too. Okay, so first things first, let's go ahead and grab our bag here. So we got our mesh bag. If you don't have a mesh bag, you could use something else, an old towel or an old t-shirt, something that's going to be breathable, that the water can actually soak through and everything, but it'll hold kind of all the solids within it. Okay, so first things first, we're going to grab our mesh bag here, and then I want to add some earthworm castings and some organic cow manure compost. So what I want to do is I want to add 1 cup of each of these, and you could go as simple as just 1 cup. If you wanted a super simple compost recipe, you could add 1 cup of either of these and a little bit of blackstrap molasses, and you could let it sit for 24 hours and you have a good compost tea. It's not going to be super high in nutrients, however, it will be high in microorganisms and biology and things like that. So first things first, let's go ahead and grab a cup of this cow manure compost from Coast of Maine. I really like this stuff. It is organically fed cows that they take the manure from, and then they compost it down with peat moss and aged oak bark as well too. Okay, so I've got 1 cup of that right now, and then I've got a cup of my earthworm castings, and I'm going to go ahead and add that to the bag as well. And now what I'm going to do is I could just kind of set this aside. I'm going to move my compost out of the way so I got a little bit more room to work with. All right, so we got our bag here now. And now what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to add my my dry amendments to this. So first I'm going to take my BioLive, and the reason I'm using BioLive is it's got a bunch of mycorrhiza in it, and it also has some beneficial bacterias that are really good for the soil biology. So I'm not going to go crazy with it, but I am just going to add 1 tablespoon of the BioLive to this mix here. Again, just for the biology itself. So I'll go ahead and get this out of my way. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add fishbone meal to this. And the reason I'm adding fishbone meal is that I'm going to be feeding my compost tea to plants that I have in flower currently. The fishbone meal is really high in phosphorus, and it's also really high in calcium as well. I tend to go with fishbone meal versus regular bone meal. It's a little bit more sustainable, and it's a cleaner amendment versus bone meal. It's harvested from, wild caught fish, and then they take their bones, the byproducts, and that's basically what it's created from. Now with cows, you have no idea how they're treated, were they fed organically, things like that, and that's typically what your bone meal is coming from, is it's just a byproduct from slaughterhouses. So I'm going to take my fishbone meal here now, and I'm going to go a little bit heavier on this. Like I said, I want that phosphorus in there, and I also want that calcium as well too. So with this, in past, I've gone all the way up to a 1/2 cup of the fishbone meal. That's completely okay. But today I'm going to go a little bit lighter. I don't believe I need quite as much as that, so I'm going to do 4 tablespoons. Or a 1/4 cup. That is basically what it breaks down to. So go ahead and add my fishbone meal here, and that's 4 right there. Let me go ahead and get this out of the way. Now we basically have our compost ready here, and then the next thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to add our simple sugars to the water. Now, the compost is where you're going to get your beneficial bacterias and microbes as well too. Now, they need something to feed on, and that's where the simple sugars come into play. They could feed on the horticultural coconut as well as the blackstrap molasses. And then what we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding aeration to it. I just have some air stones soaking in water right now. It says, the manufacturer says that you want to soak the air stones in water for a while before use. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my coconut first, and I'm just going to add 1 tablespoon to this mix. Because it is good for about a teaspoon per gallon, and with 3 gallons, 1 tablespoon is going to be 3 teaspoons. So got my coconut in there, get that off to the side, and then what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be adding 3 tablespoons of the molasses to this as well too. So again, the simple sugars are just for the microbes so they could feed on this, and what is going to end up happening is the oxygen from the oxygen stones, it's used for 2 different reasons. One, it's going to help shake all of those microbes off of the compost and off of the earthworm castings as well. But then also what it's going to do is it's going to make sure that our compost tea is aerobic, meaning with air and not without air. It's going to make sure that it doesn't become anaerobic without air. So then it's going to just basically provide a good habitat for these microbes to multiply. And that's really what we're trying to achieve first out of a compost tea, is a very microbe rich solution. Okay, and the air is going to shake them off the compost, and then it's going to help with that oxygen rich environment, so they can help multiply while feeding on the simple sugars. And then also what those microbes will do is they'll feed on any of the dry amendments that are within that solution as well too. So you want to make sure that your solution's mixed up really well. I just got a little bamboo stick here. So I'm going to make sure that this is mixed up really, really well, and make sure that the sugars and the coconut and the blackstrap molasses is all incorporated really, really well into this solution. Okay, so what I'm first going to do is I'm just going to take one of the air stones, and I like to put it inside the bag itself, and if at all possible, I will actually bury it within the compost, just to make sure that it's in there and that it's in contact with all the compost and that it's really, really doing its job. So what I'm doing is I'm just making sure that this air stone is at the bottom of the compost, at the bottom of the compost there inside the bag. I could feel it in there, so I'm going to go ahead and put that in. All right, and then my other air stone, I'm just going to drop straight to the bottom, and I also like to try and place that underneath the bag if at all possible. Okay, then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my air pump and I'm going to go ahead and plug it in, and then that is going to go ahead and start the process here, and it is currently now just pushing air through both air stones, and it is just bubbling up this solution. You want to make sure that you get a good air pump that moves a lot of air. If you don't have enough air moving through this, the compost tea won't brew as well. Now, compost teas, you could brew up to 48 hours before using them, or you could brew them as slow or as quickly as 12 to 24 hours. I opt to let them go for about 24 hours, and then I like to use them. It seems to work out really well for me. So I'm gonna grab the camera and I'll actually show you what it looks like on the inside here. All right, so here we go. We've got our compost tea now brewing. You can kind of see what it looks like on the inside of it. I did try and put that second air stone underneath the bag just to help try and shake all those microbes off of the compost again and put them into solution. So the last thing that we have to do is just kind of cover this up. And you could use anything. Today I'm just going to be using a t-shirt, so you're just going to go ahead and cover this up with a t-shirt just so nothing falls into it, and then I'll come back tomorrow and show you exactly what it looks like after 24 hours. Alright, so I wanted to give you a 24-hour update here. This is what the tea's looking like. It smells nice and sweet. It shouldn't smell rancid in any way, shape, or form. If it does, that means that it's gone anaerobic, and it's going to have a bunch of bad bacteria in there. But I've just taken the bag and, you know, I've kind of moved it around just to make sure that all the bubbles are getting in contact with all of the material in there, you know, all the compost and everything, just to make sure that it doesn't stay, or that it stays aerobic. But this is ready to water in now. With your larger plants, you could take it directly and water it straight to the plants. If you got some smaller plants, it might be a good idea just to dilute it. You could do like 2 to 1, or even less than that if you'd like. But all this material that's in this bag is still good, so definitely use it. Add it to your compost bin if you have one. Otherwise, I just like to put it on top of the soil of you know, of any plants that I have, and it'll work its way in. And all right, folks, so that's how you make a compost tea. Are you using compost teas in your garden, or might you try them? Let me know. Also, if I missed anything or you have any questions on any of the video, please let me know in the comments below. As always, like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Until next time, let's keep growing together.